it's a deliberately planned false flag or whether it is accidental or a blowback or an unintended consequence, it's always used to expand the state.
Welcome back to another edition of the Prepper Recon Podcast. Our mission is to bring you great interviews with preppers from around the world so you can be better informed and better prepared for everything from a hurricane to the end of the world as we know it.
I've personally been buying gold and silver from JM Bullion for over 2 years. They offer the best prices over spot that I can find, and I've never had a problem with an order. If you're looking to trade in some of your fiat paper for real money, check out jmbullion.com today. Prepping for the apocalypse can be expensive, but it doesn't have to be. The new book, Dirt Cheap Valuable Prepping by Cal Wilson, focuses on inexpensive ways to make the most out of your survival budget. Don't create your own financial crisis long before the collapse. Get your copy of Dirt Cheap Valuable Prepping for Kindle or in paperback at Amazon.com. Today's guest is Jim Thompson of LifeChangesBeReady.com. Jim, welcome back to the show.
Mark, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure to have you on, and we always have great conversations off and on the air.
Absolutely. It's uncanny how aligned our thinking is on most subjects. So I really appreciate the time that I spend with you.
Now, I guess, first of all, why don't you update us and tell us everything that's new over at LCBR. Tell us what's going on with the webinars and I think you got a nice solar project that we talked about last time you were on the show. So fill us in on what's going on with that and just get us caught up.
Well, I think with Life Changes Be Ready, we did the Summer of Survival series, and that was a major hit for us. We went up to Prepper Camp at the end of the summer last year, and we're just amazed at the amount of people that came through saying, "Oh, you're the Summer of Survival people." Boy, we really enjoyed it. It was like every session was like a college class. It was like going back to college, and so we came off of that and came into 2015 wondering what we were going to do. To continue the education that we offered. And I think what came out of that was that we're doing webinars every other week throughout 2015. And I think our next webinar is on the 31st with Dr. Bones and Nurse Amy. And they're always great guests to have on and always just a ton of information. And so that's been the thing with LCBR is just to continue the education, continue keeping people abreast of the latest trends in self-reliant living and things like that. So that's the focus so far. And as to the solar project, it's still going great guns. It's getting ready to be reviewed by a major blogger, a field gear editor for a major blogger, and we're excited about that, to send it off to somebody and let them put it through its paces and see how it performs in some pretty tough environments. We've done our own testing on it, but sometimes you overlook things or you don't think of this or you don't think of that. And so it's always nice to send it away and let other people play with it and give feedback to it. So I think on that project, that's the latest on it. And that product can be looked at solargokit.com, to put a shameless plug in here. SolarGoKit.com is where that product, you can learn more about it. It's a completely portable Solar Go Kit, delivers enough energy to run a small camp, and comes with a 20-watt solar panel to recharge it, and you can upgrade to the thin film flexible panels that you can roll up inside it. And it's a pretty neat project, Mark. It's been a fun project for me. And it's just one of those products that you can believe it, because it serves a real purpose and just sits there and does exactly what it's supposed to do.
Well, that's just fantastic. Now, God's delivered both of us from addictive lifestyles, and those lifestyles were kind of holding us back for what He had in store for us. So we're going to talk a little bit today about addiction and how it affects your ability to survive in a crisis. What types of things can a person be addicted to?
Boy, I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but I still wake up in the morning and long for my coffee, and generally that's the first thing that I head to. And it's not only the caffeine that's in the coffee, but other chemicals. So, there are all sorts of things. If you look at the evening news or you look at the arrest reports of your local police department or sheriff's department, you'll see people that are addicted to methamphetamine and cocaine and heroin and barbiturates and just any number of things. Today there's the specter of what's referred to as hillbilly heroin, the OxyContins, or those types of drugs. So those are the hardcore things, but there are other drugs that are as highly addictive. The codeines and the Demerols and any of the opiates and pseudo-opiates. There are just all kinds of stuff out there. Alcohol is probably the most abused drug on the planet, methyl alcohol. So again, we forget that that's a drug.
Now, why can one person drink a couple of beers or a couple glasses of wine, yet the next person has no control over how much they consume?
Boy, I think there are some pretty good medical theories out there. I think in 1938, Dr. Silkworth was probably the preeminent researcher on addiction and alcohol at the time, and he's the one that wrote the foreword to the book Alcoholics Anonymous. And he outlined that there are certain individuals who react physically different to alcohol and drugs than others, and I've never figured that out, and I don't know what your take on it is. I'd like to hear it, but with me, I pick up a drink, and it's that first drink that does me in. It's not that 30th one, because it sets up this phenomenon called craving. It's that physiological reaction to alcohol or cocaine or whatever drug it is. It affects certain individuals differently than it does others, and I think that's the $1 million question as to why. How many times, I don't know about your drinking and drug career, but with mine it was, I would stop as innocently as the next guy after work with the boys to have a drink and wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning still in the bar, drunk beyond belief, and banging on the bar wondering why. I've just never figured that out. And I've come to believe that physiologically, genetically, whatever you want to say, I react differently to addictive substances. I respond differently. It sets up this phenomenon of craving in me, and I'm powerless once I start to drink or drug.
It's kind of like an allergy. It's just something that nobody knows why. Now, how can somebody tell if they're addicted?
Well, I've come to believe, and I haven't used or abused drugs and alcohol in 32 years. I've been clean and sober. I got set free on December 21st, 1982, and I've been free ever since. I've come to believe that it's not what you drink or what you use or how much you drink or how much you use. It's what it does to you when you use or drink that separates you from the bulk of the population that can drink and drug or do what I call recreational drinking. I've never been a recreational drinker. I've been a habitual drinker and or a drugger. And so I think for me, that's the defining aspect, is not what or how much, but what it does to you when you use it, when you ingest it, that separates you from the people that don't have that problem.
Now, what about medications from a doctor? If somebody went to school that long to earn that doctor's shingle, they probably know what's good for me better than I do. So if they're prescribing it to me, it's okay for me to take, right?
I'd love to believe that, but I don't. And here's why. Because most people that are getting prescriptions from doctors for narcotics, if you will, lie to the doctors. The doctor does indeed have a lot of knowledge as it relates to physiology and your body and how these substances affect you. And they're typically prescribing them for a specific symptom. Unfortunately, with most abusers of these substances, they lie to the doctors, or they don't tell them the whole story, or they feign symptoms. And consequently, they do it so that they can abuse drugs. there's another aspect of that too, and I've known several people that had legitimate injuries, especially construction workers that would injure their back or a body part, and have a legitimate need for pain medication, only to become addicted to it unknowingly. Especially some of these newer opiates like OxyContin, oxycodone, and stuff like that. They're very powerful, and they're designed to affect certain areas of the brain, and they're highly addictive, and that addictive quality transcends pretty quickly. I mean, it happens pretty quickly. You can take somebody that really didn't have much experience beforehand and have an injury, a real injury, get prescribed these things, and then have a tough time getting off of them because they took them unknowingly and became addicted to them because of the rapid addictive properties of these new drugs.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Katie Armor offers affordable body armor, including Level 3 trauma plates made of AR-500 steel. They can endure multiple rounds from pistols and rifles up to 7.62 NATO. Their plates are available with Rhino Linings coatings to reduce SPA. Go to katiearmor.com, that's CATI armor.com today.
When disaster strikes, it's too late to prepare. PrepperRecon.com offers MOLLE-compatible individual first aid kits for your home, auto, or bug-out bag. These kits have everything you need to address a traumatic injury, including an Israeli battle dressing, quick clot, EMT shears, suture kit, Steri-strips, tourniquet, ACS chest seal, tough strip bandages, gauze, and so much more. $89 includes shipping. To buy your individual first aid kit, go to PrepperRecon.com and click the store tab at the top of the homepage. Order today before it's too late.
Do you think there's also a little bit of a mentality with medical professionals that, especially when it comes to spiritual things, and a lot of times depression and these types of things, a lot of times it's spiritual oppression that you're getting from spiritual forces, and you need a spiritual cure for it. And unfortunately, a lot of the people in the medical profession are atheists or maybe agnostic at best, and they don't really have any cure for spiritual conditions. So, and especially we get a lot of guys that are coming back from the desert, and they've been in very, very harsh environments, and they've been in a circumstance that's not normal. You know, it's not normal for you to deal with the type of stress that you have to deal with in a battlefield type scenario. And you have to do things that aren't normal, and you have to endure things that aren't normal. And a lot of these guys come back, and it's a lot to deal with. And I think that a lot of that is a spiritual problem as well. And when you go to somebody that doesn't have a spiritual solution for that, I think what they want to do is they just want to throw a pill at it and make it go away. And I don't think that works. Do you think that's true? Do you think that happens?
Oh, I think you hit the nail on the head for a lot of these things, and my comments up to this point have revolved around opiates and stuff like that. When you start getting into these depression drugs, these serotonin reuptake inhibitors and stuff like that, listen, that's a class of drug that does things to people that I don't think the medical community doesn't fully understand. And those drugs are just so widely prescribed that these poor individuals end up, again, that you hit it right on the head. They need a spiritual solution to what they're dealing with, and they're just given a drug that affects them and causes them to think and behave. In fact, it doesn't solve the problem. All it's doing is treating the symptoms, and unfortunately, there's some pretty significant side effects that affect these guys, and we see it played out in the news with a lot of these mass shootings. In fact, I think the research will show that the vast majority of these mass shootings, the shooters all had been on all of these psychotropic drugs that affect them, or psychoactive and psychotropic drugs that affect them in ways that nobody really understands. And again, the spiritual solution is the real solution. It's the one that works and deals with the heart of the matter. It doesn't just cover up the symptoms, so to speak. my experience, and I think yours as well, is that once I embraced the spiritual solution, all those other problems began to wane because I was dealing with the root cause of my problem. And as I dealt with that root cause, I began to experience freedom like I had never known, and all those problems began to fix themselves, so to speak. And I didn't need drugs or alcohol to make the pain go away.
And how do you think addiction would make survival in a crisis more difficult?
Well, I think it's, for me, I'm going to look at it from a twofold standpoint. First off, if we were to experience as a country a pretty significant apocalyptic event that disrupted normal life as we know it, a poop hit the propeller type event, then you're going to have two different types of scenarios in my way of thinking. One is you're going to have people that are unable to cope all of a sudden with the stresses that they're faced with, and there's going to be a clamor, if you will, or a movement toward for those individuals that are so predisposed to it to find chemical solutions to the stress, the pain that they're experiencing. And then you're going to have the other side of that equation is the full-blown addicts who are going to be out there looking for their next fix, and the things that they'll do to get that next fix, many of us might find objectionable. And so I think looking at it from that standpoint, that's the two sides of the coin that I see. You're going to have people looking to cope, and then you're going to have other people who are full-blown addicted, looking for their next fix and running around the countryside doing things that may not be viewed as acceptable for many of us. So I'm treading there politely, I think.
And addictions can be tremendously draining on time, health, and financial resources, even in the best of times. Do you think these drains would be amplified in a crisis?
Oh, absolutely. I don't know about you, but my own experience, when I was in full-blown addiction, I would do or say anything necessary to get high, to get my next fix. And so, addiction makes people do things that they normally wouldn't do if they weren't under the influence or weren't jonesing or their body's screaming for the next drink, drug, whatever happens to be your drug of choice. And so put yourself now in a apocalyptic scenario or a collapse scenario, and those things get multiplied 100 times. They're amplified, is the word you used in the question. First off, my experience in working with addicts over the years and alcoholics is that their perceptions are amplified anyways. They're focused on the wrong things, and especially early in addiction, early in recovery anyways, you have to bring that individual or offer them solutions that bring them back to reality. And so multiply that by a collapse event or a collapse scenario, and those perceptions get amplified or magnified many-fold, and that makes those individuals that much more dangerous, and makes the situations that much more apocalyptic or climatic, whatever term you want to use in dealing with it. So imagine that all of a sudden you're in an urban situation, you're already struggling to protect yourself, and now you've got these individuals who, many of them may be on the verge of psychosis because of the drugs that they're doing or longing or coming off of, and they're looking for that next fix, and it makes for a movie type scenario. And unfortunately, many of us may live that out in real time if we find ourselves in a major collapse in a high population area with lots of people that have been taking drugs and now all of a sudden can't get them and are coming off of them and experiencing those withdrawal symptoms. And again, some of these depression drugs and stuff, the withdrawals, the individual becomes psychotic. Or if you've got an individual that's been using methamphetamine, when they begin to withdraw, they get completely psychotic, and all of a sudden there's limited resources from a law enforcement standpoint to deal with them. It just portends for a pretty dramatic picture, if you will. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that a little bit too.
Yeah, it's absolutely a complete resource drain, and that's basically when you're really deep in addiction. For me, anyway, it consumes your every waking moment of how are you going to get the money? How are you going to where are you going to score? If it's drinking, where are you going tonight? Who are you going to be with? And it's just this cycle. And it consumes it's all consuming is what it is. And there's just nothing left of you after the drugs and the alcohol. I mean, it takes up every bit of you, every bit of your money, every bit of who you are, and every bit of your resources for those especially that are deep into addiction like I was. Now, another problem for a post-collapse situation is going to be our abilities to focus. Because we're both preppers, and that's pretty much what you do over at LCBR. And, of course, that's what I focus on at Prepper Recon, is trying to get folks educated on, what are we going to do when the wheels come off. And one of the things that people are going to have to do is they're going to have to focus on survival, and they're going to have to focus on making sure they've got adequate food, adequate water, adequate shelter, adequate security, and all of these types of things that we take for granted right now. And that requires a lot of focus, doesn't it?
It does. And the thing that, for me anyways, I've been fortunate over the years to be able to put a support group together and to have the resources to enhance my recovery. That was really important early on, having people around that I could talk to and things like that. Now add the stressors of a collapse or anything like that, especially if you've had some, and I'm speaking to those that have already been able to find recovery and have enjoyed the process of recovery and are enjoying the fruits of it. There's those individuals that are going to have to look at, what are they going to do? What are you going to do to maintain that support in a tough time, in a post-collapse or collapse scenario? And then what about the individuals who find themselves addicted now, and then realizing somewhere along the way, number one, that they can't get what they're looking for, that their means of getting high has been severely limited, and they realize their addiction and cry out and look to get clean and sober during that situation. How are they going to find recovery and support? And so, again, I try to look at it from several different aspects. So for me, having been long-term recovery, I'm in my 33rd year of recovery. I've been fortunate to have a long time to plan and have a long time to have lots of individuals in my life who help me on a daily, weekly, monthly, whatever basis to maintain a high quality of life and to work on those things that creep up or crop up in my life that caused me to use and abuse in the past. So I've been fortunate to be able to do that. Now, for people that are early in recovery, you need to, and if you're listening to this podcast, you need to start thinking in those terms. How are you going to maintain that support system when the wheels do come off? And then for all of us that are listening, how are we going to deal with those individuals that we encounter in that post-collapse or collapsing scenario that do indeed want to cry out and want to get clean and sober? So, again, it's a multifaceted thing. Again, as somebody that's been in long-term recovery, I've tried to think about that and think about how I'm going to respond, and I would encourage our listeners to do that, to begin to think in those terms, because this is going to be an aspect of prepping that many of us may not have thought about. How are you going to deal with these individuals? And how are you going to deal with, if you're in recovery and prepping, how are you going to maintain a high quality of recovery when the poop's hitting the propeller?
Now, there's other people that didn't have the same level of addictions experience that you and I had, Jim, and they're what we would call functioning addicts. And for right now, they're still paying the bills. They still show up to work. They maybe never lost a job because of their addiction. Maybe they've never had a DUI or even gotten a ticket from it. And, and they're still able to maintain their family and friendship relationships. And most of these folks are probably planning to give up their vice when it hits the fan. Is that realistic?
Boy, I don't know about you, but I can only share my experience, strength, and hope, and my journey into recovery. I was one of those functioning guys for the most part. I mean, when I found myself at the end of a shotgun in 1982, I was still working at the Space Center. I was still working on the SRBs. I was working in a clean room. I was working second shift, and I'd get off at 11 o'clock at night, and I find myself, using and abusing until 6 or 7 o'clock the next morning, only to get a few hours sleep and get up and go do it again. And that was in a good time. That was back in the early 80s when things were, lots of money being poured into the space program and defense, and so jobs were plentiful, and everybody thought that it would never end. And then I had my moment of clarity and realized where I was at and the fact that I couldn't go on living the way that I was living, and I was forced to make the choice right then and there. And so if somebody's listening to this broadcast and they find themselves in that situation, my advice and my suggestion is today is the best day to get clean and sober. Today is the best day to put it down and seek out a different way. Today is the best day to cry out to God and say, Lord, deliver me from this obsession and bring me to the other side of it. Today is the day. To keep putting it off is to just perpetuate the insanity, it'll be different tomorrow. I mean, how many times have I heard that over the years? Tomorrow it's going to, I don't know what tomorrow is going to hold, today, and just excuse after excuse after excuse. And my advice is today's the best day to get clean and sober.
And for the functioning addicts that we're talking about, even though they're getting by right now, don't you think they're going to be in a better position to thrive even now if they just go ahead and start making that move now?
Yeah, think about the amount of money that you and I spent over the years, Mark, that just, perpetuating the insanity. I don't know about you, but with addiction, it takes, again, I can only speak about me, but it took more and more and more, and it just continued to take more and more and more drugs and alcohol or whatever I was focused on at the time to either maintain or reach that same point of oblivion that I was looking for. And think about the money that I spent, again, I worked second shift at the Space Center, and just south of the south gate, you had to go through gates to get to the areas that I worked, and there were armed guards at these gates. And at lunchtime, a couple of us would jump in a car and we would drive south of the Space Center down into this area where there was a store, and we would buy a couple 6-packs of beer. And this place was only maybe 2 or 3 miles south of the gate. And by the time we got the beer, got back in the car and hit the gate, I had drank a 6-pack of beer and just chugging it, trying to get through till 11 o'clock when I got off, or 11:30 that night. Just think of the money that I spent, and this was every day. And then I'd get off work at 11 o'clock and hit the bar or hit a package store or whatever we were going to do. So you always had comrades in arms, if you will, and and just think of the amount of money that was wasted. And I smoked cigarettes to boot, which I quit, a year after I quit drinking and drugging. So I was smoking 2.5 packs of cigarettes a day, plus all the other partying and just the lifestyle. It's an expensive lifestyle. It was for me. Every dollar that I made, I blew up in partying and supporting my habits and the lifestyle or lack of discipline, whatever you want to call it, that I was faced with. And so just think, several weeks ago on Life Changes Be Ready, we had Joel Skousen on, and Joel was talking about how to harden your house and how to prepare your physical location, be it your main house or your bug out location. And somewhere he talked about the money that it takes to do so, and how over the years he's talked to people and how they always make excuses that they need to do this, they need to do that. Yet he sees them, going out to restaurants and buying the best of everything. And he's thinking to himself that, if they just throttle back their lifestyle a little bit, they'd have the money to do some of these things. And so I think that same argument is what I'm trying to make here, that all the money that you're using to support an addictive lifestyle, and trust me, mine was very expensive to support because, again, I needed more and more, whether it was drugs or alcohol or whatever. It took more and more and more as my body developed more and more resistance. And all that money could be put towards your preps. If you think your preps are expensive, and sometimes, certain purchases can be, what in your lifestyle are you comfortable with that you could do without, and use that money to do those things. And that same argument can be made for the people that are still using and abusing and stopping at the package store every night on the way home from work and buying a fifth of this or 2/5 of that or 2 bottles of wine or going by the drug dealer and buying whatever it is that's going to get them through till morning before they have to get back up and go to work and do it again.
And then for today's show, we've kind of focused on identifying addiction and kind of talking about the problems and how it's going to really, really hold you back, and of both how it's holding you back now and also what you're looking at potentially for a collapse scenario as well. And so what we're going to do is we're going to get back together and we're going to do another show that's going to air next week. And we're going to talk about some practical steps that you can take now to start getting free of your addiction now and start really taking it serious and getting your health back and some things that you can do to make sure that you stay clean in the collapse if that were to happen. So great show, Jim. If there's anybody out there that's struggling right now with addiction and you just don't know who to turn to, and you just really don't have that support, because a lot of times an addiction will pretty much run everybody off that's available to help us. And you can shoot me an email, and I'll certainly do whatever I can to help you get on the right track. And Jim, just a lot of great advice. Can you just tell us one more time where folks can find your work?
You can reach us at lifechangesbeready.com. You can hit the email button there or contact us button. And again, I want to reiterate what you just said, that if there's anybody out there that's struggling and realized today through whatever you and I have talked about that they do have some issues that need to be addressed and they're willing to, I'm available. Shoot me an email. You can go to lifechangesbeready.com and hit the contact us button, and I'll get back to you the best way I know how. And I know I've been doing it for a while, and know that initially I found recovery in a 12-step program that got me. It was like a triage, and got me cleaned up enough to where I could see my way clear to realizing that I had a spiritual problem as well, and that I needed a spiritual remedy, and I found that in a church. And so I would be able to point you in whatever, share my experience, strength, and hope. And I think Mark would do the same, right, Mark?
Absolutely. Jim, thanks so much for taking time to be with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to doing this again, doing the second part.
In the days of Noah, Book 2, Persecution by best-selling author Mark Goodwin. A globalist conspiracy transpires by way of a false flag attack against America's energy infrastructure. Noah and Cassandra Parker witness a complete economic meltdown, which is intentionally triggered by the event. The assault is blamed on patriots and Christians who are rounded up into detention centers across the country. Noah and his friends must take action to prepare for the meltdown and defend against the totalitarian regime, which is gunning for their freedom and, quite possibly, their very lives. Get your copy of The Days of Noah, Book 2, Persecution for Kindle, paperback or audio edition at Amazon.com today.